Hey everybody, Connor here, and recently I found this list of NBA rule changes over time. I think it's really interesting to be able to see how our favorite sports have changed over the years. So I wanted to share this with you guys. I'll drop this PDF in the description. It has a ton of really interesting NBA rules, even more than share with you guys today. But I did want to point out five that really got my attention that I think are really interesting. So let's jump straight into it. Before the 1950-1951 season, a rule was made that after a free throw is made in the last 3 minutes, there is a jump ball between the player who committed the foul and the player fouled instead of possession for the team that committed the foul to eliminate deliberate fouling and roughness. So obviously what was going on here early in the NBA, there was a lot of problems with intentionally fouling in the late game, slowing down the pace of play, a lot of arguments that we still see in the league today. And so one interesting thing they did to try to curtail this was to basically treat late game fouls almost like technical fouls, in the sense that if a player made a free throw after being fouled, they would then be given the chance to win possession back for the team instead of the ball going back to the team that fouled like it normally does. So this would be done to de-incentivize late game fouling. Now obviously that did not work, because just a few years later, in 1953-54, we get a rule that says players are limited to 2 fouls per quarter, and if a third foul is committed, the player has to sit out the remainder of the quarter. What I love about this just feels like a YMCA, kind of a youth or rec ball league rule to me. If you make this amount of fouls, then you have to take a timeout. Only allowing players to commit 2 fouls. Again, this would be done to kind of prevent the late game fouling. But again, it says this rule is rescinded when it fails to do so, because you can obviously see some workarounds to the rule. Teams can spread out their fouls among, multiple players that are in the game. You can bring in players just to foul 3 times. So this, isn't something that was really going to work either. But I think it's fun to see the NBA try out these rules in their early stages. Next, we're going to find a rule change that actually changed scoring, which I think is kind of rare. In 1969-70, the scoring rule on tip-ins of free throws was changed. So apparently how this used to work is that if somebody tipped in a missed free throw, there would be 1 point, and the point would go to the player that shot the free throw, which is really interesting. So obviously we know how this rule has changed today. If you tip in a free throw, it counts as 2 points, just like a made basket, just like a offensive rebound leading into a made basket, and the 2 points go to the player that got the rebound and tipped it in rather than the free throw shooter. I think it's really interesting that the free throw shooter, at any point in time was given credit for a basket scored by another player just because it was a result of their free throw. But obviously this was the case until 1969-70, which means for, more than 20 years since the start of the BAA, the predecessor to the NBA. Next, this is going to be a really fun one. 1974-75, I absolutely love this rule. When there are punching fouls on both teams during the same play, the team last offended is awarded possession of the ball. Obviously, the NBA used to be a lot tougher, a lot more scrappy than it is now. And I just love the idea of, if 2 players or 2 teams punch each other during the same play, whoever got punched last gets the ball, because I guess they would need some kind of way to arbitrate these instances. Maybe they happened a lot more than we even like to remember. But the NBA has actually evolved these rules on fights a lot over time. And so as a continuation, I'm going to kind of go through a few more of these, kind of grouping together this as our 4th rule change. 1976-77, it gets a little stricter. Any player who engages in a fight is subject to a fine of $10,000 and a suspension. This going into effect during the season, which means there must have been some event that caused it to come up. Again, this is 1976-77. And then, obviously, this continues to be an issue with fighting, so the NBA tries in the 90s to really get their game under control. 92-93. Any player who throws a punch now immediately is ejected from the game, suspended for at least 1 game, and fined an appropriate dollar amount. And then we see, a couple other rules here. If you throw a punch that connects, you'll be ejected, suspended for a minimum of 1 to 5 games. Players leaving the bench area during fights are fined. I think even in the next season, we see any player in street clothes who leaves the bench area during a game will be ejected and suspended for at least 1 game. any player that get in street clothes, which I think is a funny phrase to use, getting involved in an altercation. So we see all kinds of these fighting rules. If a team official gets into a fight, here's the punishment for that. Pretty crazy stuff. And then finally in 1994, 1995, the last of these kind of rules I want to share with you guys today is I find this to be really interesting. A player is now awarded 3 foul shots if you are fouled while attempting a 3-point shot. So this is really interesting because this means that before, for about the first 15 years or so of the NBA having a 3-point line, if you got fouled taking a 3-point shot, you would only receive 2 free throws. And obviously, now this rule being changed to 3 free throws, which it has stayed at for the last 25 seasons, makes it much more lucrative to get fouled on a 3-point shot. If you can get fouled on a 3, that is the best possible outcome really for a possession in basketball, because for the vast majority of players in the league, they're going to be shooting 70, 80, 90% from the 3-point line. So if you do get 3 free throws, you're kind of expected to make at least 2 of them, and the average is somewhere between 2 and 3. So it's even better than a wide open layup or a dunk. However, we've seen players like James Harden kind of abuse this rule, and Harden in particular draws more 3-point shooting fouls than the majority of teams in the league. So there has been a little bit of chatter on maybe if we want to adjust this rule and make it again down to just two free throws if you're fouled while shooting a 3. I kind of like a rule personally where you would change it to a technical. So if you get fouled on a 3, that player gets 1 free throw and then their team keeps possession of the ball. I think that would be another way you could kind of mitigate this. But I think these have been 5 really interesting rule changes that we've seen over the course of the NBA. Again, we have pages and pages and pages of these rules, so I'll make sure to drop this PDF in the description of the video. But if you've enjoyed these rule changes, please like, subscribe, and comment which one was your favorite, and if there's any NBA rule changes you think should be considered for the league going in the future. Again, I've been Connor. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time.